You've had a long and successful career at the top of British business. Can you describe your career path?
I'd say completely happenstance. I set up my first business because I did badly in my final exams at university. I was going to go into academe, and in fact, to be fair to me, all the people taught me that I was, and I got a less good degree than we expected. And slightly oversimplifying, but to survive, I had to set up a business, and it's gone on from one lurch to another. Now, I was, as I still am, what was then called left-wing. I'm not sure what that is any longer. So I spent half my time doing non-business things and using the profits I made to finance not-for-profit activities. And I've done that for the rest of my life, and things have just come up. So I've been involved in starting about 60 businesses, have been involved running some very large ones, but I've also I was chairman of Tate when we built Tate Modern. I was chairman of the largest youth organisation, chairman of a very significant third world organisation, and most recently I've been heavily involved in the fields of mental health and in dealing with terrorists. So I've had a charmed career, but none of it's been planned.
Why did you decide to champion the cause of mental health?
Oh, very simply, about 20 years ago, perhaps slightly more now, I realised that I suffered from clinical depression. I then, as one does, I Googled in this age, read everything, and discovered that it's quite normal to discover in your 40s and 50s that you suffer from it all your life. And that what I thought was a spiritual experience at age 12, when I looked at this woman who was my mother and thought, why am I supposed to love that woman? And I thought I'd get back to my spiritual experience before I met my maker. Unfortunately, it was my first acquaintance with whatever depression is. So when I was about 48, 49, when everything was wonderful in my life, I had a very bad brush with depression. And my wife stopped me doing things in the world of mental health because she said I got to come to terms with it myself, which was very wise advice. But over the last 10 years, as I've learned how to deal with it, as I've learned more about it, I've got more involved trying to help others.
Were you scared?
No, I felt like SH blank blank. It was just horrible. Just to be absolutely plain, I recognise objectively that when I've got clinical depression, which I haven't had now since 2007, by the way, so I'm getting something right. Doesn't mean to say I haven't been very depressed, but that's a different thing altogether. My clinical depression is the worst thing I've ever had, much worse than breaking my leg in 10 places, which I did once. But objectively, my clinical depression is a light version of it. If I compare myself with a lot of people I know, for example, I don't really know him, but Stephen Fry, whom I hugely admire, clearly has, if I'm 3 out of 10, he's 9 out of 10. So even at my 3 out of 10, it's horrible. It's a very nasty experience, not to be confused with what I call small d depression. You know, being down, things go wrong, you get sacked, someone dies, and you feel miserable about it. But that's quite different from being clinically depressed.
And what did that experience teach you?
I don't think anything very much, the direct one, because I didn't learn how to deal with it then. I think I have since. Just before, one's got to make plain, there isn't an adequate definition of depression. The American Bible for these things, the DSM, is generally recognized to be useful for the insurance companies, but not to be very helpful in defining it. And it's like cancer 50 years ago. When I was a child, we thought cancer was an illness. Now it's a marketing term, and it's been disaggregated, and we hope that depression will be over the years. So when I first had it, I just found a way of getting over it over the next 6-12 months by luck or just struggling. But I didn't really learn how to deal with it. I now appreciate that there are certain kinds of people who get things done, who've got energy, like me, who are inclined to be depressed. And their reaction to it is to say, right, I've got to lick this problem. And actually, what I learnt over the next 10 years, but not immediately, is to be more accepting of it. So as I sit here right now, I haven't had depression for 10 years. It's my anniversary, pretty well. Yes, I went to Australia when I got depressed, came back 10 years ago. I absolutely believe it will come back. I'm accepting of it. It's like I got arthritis. Can I get over it for a bit? Yes, but it'll come back. And I believe that having a sort of philosophical attitude to it, a relaxed attitude to it, is one of the reasons it hasn't come back. But it will come back. So I think I've learned now to be accepting of it. And I've noticed in others that when people become more accepting, it's helpful. It doesn't cure it. You don't cure it. It's just how you are.
And how did your friends and colleagues react to you?
Well, I tell you, first of all, am I lucky? I'm one of the people who is able to keep on going despite the depression. And it's hell. It's like walking through treacle. But I was, at the time, I was chairman of one large company. I had loads of other responsibilities in the for-profit and not-for-profit area. And so I wasn't advertising it, I wasn't concealing it when I was depressed. It was new. What then happened is, at the end of the day, I was about 50. I was not poor. I was rather successful. I was married to a woman who still spoke to me, as I still am. I had children who seemed to want to be with me, and I had a lot of friends. So I started to talk about it then, and indeed the government then asked to use me in advertising, and I allowed them to. And then the great thing happened. The decision to go into government advertising was arguably the only brave decision I've ever made, but it was only brave once because everyone said how wonderful you are. And since then, that's what everyone said. And most recently, when I got involved in mental health recently, everyone thinks it's wonderful that someone like me's done it. It's so great. Thank you very much.
Do you think high flyers are particularly vulnerable?
Yes, certain kinds of high flyers, but I wouldn't, it's like saying there's one kind of prostate cancer and there's another 5 different kinds. Yup, without a doubt. I have a great friend, a wonderful man called Tom Stutterford, who used to be an MP and then became the medical correspondent of the Times. And he used to say to me, I thank heavens for bipolar people, because they're the people who get things done. No, but I'm not sure what the definition of bipolar is, but high flyers definitely are vulnerable to it. But there are loads of other categories of depression.
Do you think it's still a taboo in business?
It's better than it was. And there is a minority of businesses, large and small, who are very civilized. For example, in our own country, Legal & General, which I guess is one of the top 10 companies and the biggest shareholder, the chief executive, Nigel Wilson, is completely lifting the taboo. I took part in a Canadian called a kind of rally at Twickenham the other day called the No Red Card Day. They have a campaign saying, if you come forward with a mental illness, there is no red card. So it's beginning to be lifted, but there's still a lot of stigma, and much more important, there are a lot of people who recognise that it's a problem, recognising its huge human cost, recognise there's a huge cost to business, but don't know what to do about it.
Do you think mental illness will ever be treated as equivalent to physical illness?
Yes. I'd go slightly further than that. I'd say it already is being treated as equivalent to physical illness. And that I remember there's a wonderful psychiatrist called Alain Gregoire, who's actually as British as you and I are, but his name is spelled Alain Gregoire, presumably he had a French grandfather or grandmother. And he's the leading expert on perinatal depression. And I heard him the other day argue very coherently that actually most of the mental illnesses are treatable now. The problem is the supply side of treatment is incredibly fragmented and siloized, and then the demand side doesn't know where to go and what to do.
Tell us about your campaign, your current campaign.
Well, it's not a campaign. I think you're referring to the report that Paul Farmer, who is the chief executive of Mind, which for the benefits of people who don't live in Britain, is the leading mental health charity, or one of the 2 leading mental health charities in the UK. He and I were asked by the Prime Minister to write a report on how to improve mental health at work in the UK. And we produced the report 2-3 weeks ago. And I'm glad and proud to say that the government, led by the Prime Minister, has accepted it in its entirety and has said that they're going to implement our recommendations, starting with the civil service and with the National Health Service. and go on from there in the public sector, and that they will consider a range of policies to encourage the private sector to do the same.
And just to be clear, the core recommendation of your report?
It's very simple. We've all got mental health. Mental health does not mean mental ill health any more than physical health. You've got your mental, I've got my mental health, we discovered that the extent, so it's not a recommendation, I'm not answering your question particularly well, but I think I'll start by saying we discovered that mental ill health at work is much worse than we thought. 300,000 people leave the UK workforce every year with long-term mental health conditions. That's far worse than people with physical health conditions. It's the population of Newcastle or Dublin or whatever. Second, we discovered that, of course, there's a huge human cost, that's why I'm involved, but there is a massive economic cost, roughly £100 billion a year. Third, we discovered, partly what I was saying before, that there are investments can be made to improve it. Only 3 weeks ago, there was an article in the Lancet about the Australian part of the Australian Fire Service, where they've invested in improving their mental health. From every pound they've invested, they've got £9.85p return. So the recommendation is that everyone running businesses should recognise that mental health is not something that just happens to a small minority of people. And going back to what I was saying earlier on, that we've all got mental health. Some of us at any point in time are thriving. Some of us are struggling a bit. Some of us are really ill. And that there are steps that people running businesses can take to improve that situation. And we would argue that everyone running large organisations or small organisations, whether in the for-profit or not-for-profit sector, should do that for human, moral reasons, but fundamentally because they will save money by doing so. There's a huge economic argument for doing it.
And why do you think so many people in the UK are suffering from mental illness?
Well, I think it's part of the human condition. There are 4 of us in this room at the moment. I would say statistics show that 2 of us will get flu this year. It's part of being alive. It's been suppressed and being kept beneath the surface. There's a lot of talk about mental ill health increasing. I'm not sure I buy that. I don't know, and I don't say anyone can. As stigma lifts a bit, people are talking more about it and are coming forward more. I just think that it's complex being alive. We've got complex bodies, complex brain chemistry, which we don't understand much about. And it's like lots of people have pains in their tummies and pains in their arms, and we've learned how to deal with most of them. We need to learn how to deal with pains in our psyche.
Is the gap between rich and poor a factor?
I can't indulge in a sweeping generalisation, and my answer is probably slightly politically driven, because I start from a somewhat what would have been called in a leftist position, but I believe it's inherently more likely that people from very deprived backgrounds have mental health problems. I think there is evidence which, sometimes you read newspapers, you would think that mental health is a Californian or a London or a New York illness. So, in point of it, I think there is evidence suggesting that people in the Congo, Darfur, the west of China, have much lazier lives and a more clinical depression. But I haven't seen the evidence very hard, but that would be the common sense. However, does that mean that being rich and comfortable leaves you unscathed? Boy, oh boy, it doesn't.
Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, I'm just a personal experience. I mean, I'm rich and comfortable, relatively speaking. I'm not Bill Gates, but I can go and buy anything I want and do anything I want. And every now and again, when I'm least expecting it, I find myself feeling like SHIT. That's an awful lot of people, of course, enter depression because of what I call external events. In my case, there seems to be no external event. It just happens from time to time, and it's presumably something to do with the chemistry of my brain.
And based on your knowledge, do you think the increasing materialism in UK society is a factor?
I don't know. I certainly think that post the Second World War, the third of the world or the quarter of the world that's rich has manifestly failed to learn how to profit and benefit from the materialism, and has caused itself all sorts of problems. Whether, if you distinguish, whether it's really had a dramatic effect on serious clinical illness, I doubt. Whether it's, I suspect that failure to deal with materialisms caused a lot of what I call small d depression as to big D depression. But the answer is I don't know.
And do you think technology is to blame?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think it's rather the other way around. I think technology, particularly digital technology, there are beginning to be signs that it can help a great deal. That at the moment, I think I'm right in saying in the UK, the calculations done by Graham Thornycroft, who's the great expert, is I think roughly a third of people with a serious mental health condition get treatment, and we're a rich country. That we're beginning to develop digital technologies which dramatically lower the cost and which can give a far bigger percentage of the population access to it. And if you could imagine, if we all become used to the notion that if we're feeling awful, there are online remedies that we can talk to and relate, sometimes with a human being behind them, that I think is part of the future.
Do you think social media is a factor?
I don't. Ever since my children told me that I was too old to have anything to do with social media, A. B, that I shouldn't trust any of the people controlling them, and C, that the elite of their generation would soon stop using it, which I gather is now happening in America and the UK. I haven't used social media. My children will allow me to tweet, but I don't like the sight of elderly people pretending to be young and tweeting, so I haven't a clue.
And just one last question on influences before we move on. Do you think it's a product of an ageing society?
That's a good question to which I don't know the answer. I think probably not. I keep reading the newspapers about how there's an epidemic of mental health among young people. I'm a bit cautious about that because, again, I haven't seen the evidence. And I'm rather suspect that it may be the result of people being able to talk about it more as a result of stigma listing. But I don't think so. On the other hand, there is undoubtedly a link between mental ill health and other illnesses, comorbidity. And, it makes sense. If I've got all sorts of things wrong with my body. As it happens, I don't think they're leading me to feel depressed about life, but in a lot of people's cases they do.
What advice would you give an employer? What advice would you give an employer who has to deal with cases of mental illness in the workforce?
I'd start further back from that. I would advise an employer, and first to read the report we just written for the Prime Minister, which is online, very easy to get hold of, and it's got some very simple advice. And we have a 6-point set of actions that we think any organisation, however small, can take. But basically, they boil down to create transparency around this subject through leadership. So make it clear to everyone that that the company, the organisation recognises that mental ill health is just as real as physical ill health. That if someone puts up their hand and says, "I'm feeling awful," that they will be supported and their career will not be affected as to 99% of the time. And then behind that, as for the majority of people, it's about training and educating over time people to realise that we've all got mental health and to be more aware of our own and other people's and more sensitive to it and little things that can help. Now, and of course, behind that is also the recognition there will be a small percentage of people who are seriously ill, and therefore employers need to know where to go to get help for that. And then you get into the problem in our country of the constant cry of under-resourcing in mental health services, although politicians, to be fair, have been increasing the resources in real terms. And employers have to think about how they're going to cope with that. If you've got someone who's got serious clinical depression and the local health trust says mental health trust says you can be on a 9-month or 6-month waiting list, What do you do about that? You go to some private supplier, etc., etc. But fundamentally, it is about doing what this chap, Nigel Wilson, the chief executive of L&G, is doing. L&G, with its 100,000 employees, huge business, there's an internal campaign saying, no red card today, which is about saying, if you say you're suffering from mental health, you will get exactly the same support as if you're suffering from physical health, and here's what we're going to do about it. And that is what employers should do.
And what advice would you give the employee? Stay quiet or go public?
It completely depends on the circumstances. That wonderful journalist, Melanie Reid, who's a tetraplegic and writes a column every Saturday morning called Spinal Column? No, whatever it is. I mean, she's a Spinal Column, yes, a Spinal Column. She did an article about depression featuring me about 10 years ago, and I got a huge postbag from mainly from people I knew saying, we so admire you, which they're wrong to, because as I told you earlier, everyone says it's wonderful by coming out, as it were, but saying, should I come out? And in a lot of cases I said, no, you need, if you're an ambitious 30-year-old working for whoever, whether it's government, an investment bank, a retail, anything, and you're feeling very depressed, if you're working for a company where in truth, if you come forward, it will damage your career, then actually change company, but don't do it, and vice versa. The good news is more and more employers are becoming sophisticated in their own interest. It's not, if I'm working for you, James, and I'm feeling awful, it's in your interest, rather than set a train of events in hand which mean that I leave, all the investment in me goes down, it's in your interest to get me back to work just as it is if I've broken my leg. And that's where we're going to. But no, I would say it completely depends on the circumstances.
Do you think politicians are serious about tackling mental illness?
Yes, I do. I would say, wouldn't I? But I don't think the report that Paul Farmer and I've done is, I think, a watershed. I mean, the fact is, on the day it came out, the Prime Minister welcomed it and announced she was going to implement it. The Cabinet Secretary blogged and tweeted. The head of the Health Service similarly tweeted. And perhaps as significantly, can you think of any issue in which the Labour Party, led by Mr. Corbyn, has not been oppositional in recent years? The answer to the exam question is yes, there's one. Mental health. Good for them.
What's the one thing you think that everyone can do to help themselves?
It's just simply realising we've all got mental health. I mean, let me put it another way. There's a wonderful professor at Cambridge called Ian Goodyear, who is one of the world's great gurus on mental health among teenagers. He said, it's not so long ago we didn't know how to deal with a cut finger. We've now all got to learn how to deal with a cut mind. So what everyone's got to do is understand we've all got mental health, recognise it in ourselves, recognise it in our friends, and, as to most of the time, learn how to cope with it.
And in summary now, the last 2 points, do you think mental illness is an epidemic?
No. I think it's I don't. Myself, there's a lot of talk about it being on the increase. I'm rather sceptical of that for reasons I've given. I think probably as people are becoming more open about it, so it looks as though there's lots of it. No, I think it's part of the human condition.
And is one of the challenges that it's an invisible illness?
Yes, it is. It's so, and we now in the UK, the government has said, as a matter of policy, it recognises parity between mental illness and physical illness. It should be seen exactly the same, which is a major step forward. In terms of achieving the step, making that happen, it is very difficult that we don't, in truth, yet have biological explanations for depression, OCD, schizophrenia, etc., etc. We will. I'm confident we'll get there. 50 years ago, we didn't have biological explanations for loads of cancer, but we're getting there. It just takes a bit of time.
Dennis, many thanks.
Not at all.
Can you describe your career path to date?
Yes, I'm what you call a wandering metabolic minstrel. In other words, I've worked in many fields. I started off in general practice, and then I went into chemical pathologist, trained as a chemical pathologist, and then I left the laboratory and went into private practice in relation to testosterone treatment. But I found that rather than the sort of circulatory problems that I was expecting, I had people with this condition called the male menopause come to me. And I got more and more interested in this, and really spent the last 25 years of my career working on testosterone and treatment and comparisons with the female menopause.
What are the symptoms of, first of all, the male menopause?
Well, they're very similar to the symptoms of what you'd expect of the female menopause. But the most prominent one, and the one that men most often complain of, is difficulty with erections, particularly loss of early morning erections. But they can get night sweats and even hot flushes, and also depression can be quite severe when the active testosterone level drops.
What are the, how has the treatment developed over the last 10 years?
Testosterone treatment has come along quite fast, really, over the last 10 years, with new testosterone preparations, but still it's the same basic molecule. It doesn't come from Peruvian bull's testicles in the mating season, as it were, but it's actually derived from soy. It's closely related to soy, and they tweak the molecule and produce testosterone from it. So most preparations now are pure, what you call bioidentical testosterone, which is the real thing, the real McCoy.
Is there a typical testosterone deficiency sufferer?
Yes, the most typical is the man of around 50. In other words, he's going through the menopause at the same age as his wife. But it can vary in age. It's more variable than the female menopause. It can be any time from, there may be particular conditions which cause it to come on in the 30s, or it may be much later in life, 60, 70 odd.
Can you describe the process that you put a potential patient through before you decide to put them onto testosterone replacement?
The process that we put a patient through is more like a clinical examination to look for signs of testosterone deficiency, but also there are certain questionnaires that can bring out the symptoms and paint the characteristic picture of the male menopause. It's known as the aging male syndrome questionnaire, and it has the questions about energy, drive, whether the person's depressed or not, whether they have dry skin, whether they have night sweats, and particularly questions about their erectile function.
And can you describe the effect when you put them onto testosterone?
Sorry, so
Can you describe the effect on the patient once you've decided you're going to treat them and you either inject or give them gel?
treating patients with testosterone is one of the most gratifying forms of clinical treatment because it can take effect within a few days or certainly within a few weeks, and the symptoms just go away and stay away if you've got the right dose.
And how long does it last if you put, say, a patient onto injections for testosterone deficiency? How long will that injection last?
The length of action of an injection is quite variable. It's one of the tests for the degree of resistance, and it can be a standard injection can last either a month or it can last 2 months, sometimes 3 months, if the person's quite sensitive to testosterone.
How risky is the treatment?
Fortunately, it's a very safe form of treatment. It's one of the safest forms of treatment there is because it's with a natural hormone that the body's used to and can cope with. So you monitor it carefully and there's very little risk to it. It used to be thought that it might cause prostate cancer, but that is a scare called hormonophobia, which is in the past. Nowadays it's regarded as safe for the prostate, safe for the heart, safe for the circulation, and safe for the brain as well. So really it's a very safe form of treatment, and that's why I'm recommending that people stay on it for the rest of their lives if necessary, but not more than 50 years.
How many men in the UK suffer from testosterone deficiency?
About 20% of men show testosterone deficiency, but I'm more and more adopting the thing that you don't have to have florid symptoms of testosterone deficiency to benefit from it, and that it's a good form of preventive medicine that women can share with their husbands in terms of hormone replacement therapy.
And how many women in the UK suffer from deficiency?
Well, generally it's reckoned that at various times in their lives, but mainly around the age of 50, 100% of women suffer from estrogen deficiency and could benefit from hormone replacement treatment with it.
How old is your oldest patient?
I have had patients who've gone up to just over 100, but generally they age happily and in good condition, more into their 80s and 90s.
And how old is your youngest patient?
My youngest patient is probably around the age of 25, but then you have to be careful treating with testosterone because it can suppress the fertility below a certain age. So generally I pass the younger patients on to another doctor who specialises more in fertility treatments.
Is it possible with treatment to maintain a strong sex drive well into your 80s and 90s?
Certainly it's possible for men to maintain their sex drive into their 80s and 90s. It depends on the partner they're with, whether it keeps them interested, so to speak.
Can you explain the emotional feelings of people who come to you with erectile dysfunction?
Men with erectile dysfunction can really be quite desperate and quite severely depressed because they feel literally impotent, unable to cope with life, and that they can't satisfy their partner, and that they're really very unhappy. But it's possible to restore their vim and vigour and their esprit de corps.
Do they feel ashamed?
Yes, they can feel very ashamed when they're impotent, and it affects, not only their sex lives but their business lives as well.
Do they feel confused?
They can feel very confused about what's happening to them and need their confidence restored quite considerably. And many people have become irritable and bad-tempered when their testosterones are low, and they may have given up their business, or their business may have given them up.
Do they feel angry?
Yes, they can feel very angry and irritable, which is not what you would expect of a low testosterone person, but certainly they can be very angry indeed.
Can teenagers suffer from it?
It's very rare that teenagers will suffer from testosterone deficiency, and they need to be investigated in far more detail in a different way. You can't just put them on testosterone. You may need drugs that actually stimulate the production of testosterone because you don't want to deprive them of their fertility for life.
Does lifestyle affect erectile dysfunction?
There's a lot of elements to lifestyle that can affect testosterone deficiency and erectile dysfunction. Certainly brewer's droop is not a mythical condition, it's a very real condition.
So alcohol?
That can come with too much alcohol. And sometimes people sort of burn themselves out prematurely, and their testosterone goes from high to being low. So if they're constantly tired and indulging in either excess alcohol or drugs, then it can decrease their testosterone levels.
Just explain for me the link between excessive alcohol drinking and erectile dysfunction.
Well, Shakespeare said that alcohol enhances desire but diminishes performance, and this is a very real factor, and it really does affect it's possible to pickle the testes, so to speak, and to reduce their ability to produce testosterone if it's really excessive and over a long period of time.
So the alcohol is lowering the testosterone?
The alcohol is damaging the testosterone and increasing resistance to its action, so that it makes the testosterone less effective.
Bad diet? What effect does that have?
So yeah.
Bad diet?
Yes, a bad diet is not so harmful in relation to testosterone. I think excessive vegetarianism can reduce the production of testosterone, and anything that, if the diet is bad enough to undermine the general health, then that can reduce testosterone as well.
And vegetarianism, excessive vegetarianism, there's a link from that to a lower production of testosterone?
Only in extreme cases of vegetarianism, which are seldom accompanied by excess alcohol, because it's part of a healthy living profile. But certainly it's been shown scientifically in studies that going on a vegetarian diet can lower your testosterone level by about 14%.
Obesity?
Yes, this is an increasing, obesity is an increasing cause of testosterone deficiency, and it's possibly linked with a diabetic tendency. And so often people become obese, become diabetic, and then become testosterone deficient.
Why does obesity reduce testosterone?
Obesity affects the general metabolism to reduce testosterone in a quite marked way, and that's why testosterone deficiency is becoming more common, particularly in the overweight.
Are most diabetics prescribed with testosterone in this country?
No, it's very sad, but the important part that testosterone can play in diabetes is not recognised. And I really came into testosterone treatment because of a man who had severe arterial disease and was becoming obese, and part of the treatment was to actually get him to lose weight, and the testosterone dilated up the blood vessels and improved his circulation so that he didn't have to have amputation of legs. And I think it's very sad, the number of diabetics who lose their legs because of lack of testosterone and its effect on the circulation.
Do you advise your patients to use a combination of testosterone and Viagra?
Often I think the two work very well together. The drugs like Viagra work very well in conjunction with testosterone, and the results can be quite dramatic, and potency can be restored to very much to patient satisfaction.
Why do they work so well together?
The reason for the combined action between testosterone and Viagra or drugs like it is because one of the things that it does is to restore the smooth muscle in the penis, and this is effective in causing the Viagra to work better.
Can the use of Viagra on its own be effective for people with testosterone deficiency?
Yes, sometimes Viagra on its own can work effectively, but usually it's only temporary. And the typical story of a Viagra user is a diabetic who is given routinely Viagra, but it only works for a short period of time because the underlying testosterone deficiency is working against it and it's becoming less effective.
Does testosterone improve the strength of erections?
Yes, certainly testosterone can improve the strength as well as the frequency of erections. It's one of the beneficial actions, so that potency is restored. Often it's been found experimentally that testosterone deficiency can reduce the size and strength of the muscle in the penis.
Does testosterone improve the quality of orgasm?
Certainly, testosterone can help improve the duration and length of orgasm in a quite satisfying manner, as well as restoring general sexual function and pleasure.
And does it increase the amount of sperm ejaculated?
Usually, testosterone treatment can, over a period of years, reduce the amount of sperm, and certainly the number of sperm are reduced. So you'd think that wonderful fertility would be the result, but sometimes it's quite the result, and you have to warn patients that testosterone treatment over a period of time may decrease the sperm count.
And why is that?
There's a narrow band of hormone level necessary for sperm production, and if you exceed that limit, then the number of sperm decreases.
How much does the treatment cost?
Treatment is very variable. It does need to be supervised, so it's the medical supervision and the setting in which it's provided. The actual testosterone itself is really can be quite cheap. The injections are more pricey, but the skin gels can be very cheap indeed. Cheap as vitamin pills.
How often do you need to have a blood test if you're on testosterone?
Yes, you need to have a blood test before you start on testosterone, not so much as to see what the level is, but just get a marker, and then when you put the patient on testosterone, you don't want him taking excessive amounts, so you need to regulate it by means of blood tests. But they're more from the safety side, and to make sure that the blood doesn't become too thick, for example. You can get an increase in hemoglobin if you give excessive amounts of testosterone, so it's necessary to monitor that by means of blood tests.
Why is the treatment so controversial?
I think the treatment's controversial and not recognised by the majority of the medical profession because they don't realise the safety of it. We've got what you call hormonophobia, which is an unreasonable fear of testosterone treatment because of rumours, about the safety of testosterone, whereas it's actually a very safe drug. Many people regard it as dangerous and think that the patient might actually become more aggressive, which isn't true at all. It actually makes them much calmer, more satisfied with life, and it generally makes life easier. So a lot of my last 25 years have been spent writing books and articles about the safety of testosterone treatment and indeed the need for testosterone treatment, which is only given in about 5% of cases where it's needed.
What's driven you to champion the cause in this way?
Well, it's such a satisfying form of treatment to give. The results are so good, and you see you can change lives, you can restore a man's happiness and libido and potency, and it's such an effective means of treatment, and it's one that's so neglected. It's just ignored, and so I've been working away and writing books and articles to point out the need for testosterone treatment.
And what's the reaction of the medical establishment been?
Well, by and large, they've thrown up their hands in horrors, though now it's becoming more recognised. But still, you know, when there's hard pressure on the medical profession, they don't want new conditions to diagnose, and they don't want to spend any money on it, which is a pity, because actually it's an effective form of preventive medicine, and in the long term it could actually save a lot of money in terms of the damaging consequences of its lack in relation to depression, in relation to broken marriages, in relation to people retiring early because of the lack of incentive provided by testosterone.
Do you think the NHS will ever be converted?
Yes, I believe they will, as the evidence piles up that testosterone treatment is necessary and effective, and people see the results. I mean, it's not just a form of treatment that is a luxury, but it's a necessity for men, and that's why I've written this book, a 50-plus plan to his and hers HRT, to convince the medical profession in general that testosterone treatment is both necessary and desirable and cost-effective and need not be expensive. It's not a luxury treatment, it's a necessity.
In your email to me over the last few days, you made a comment about the disastrous fall in the uptake in America. Am I right in thinking that?
Not in testosterone. It's the fall in HRT followed the publication of the 2002 Women's Health Initiative report, which was a bad study using a bad preparation, badly publicised, and it caused uptake of HRT for women to drop from 44% down to about 5%, which is a public health disaster, and we're still trying to reverse that.
So it's a hormone replacement for women that's fallen off.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that testosterone treatment has actually been very popular in America of late?
Testosterone treatment has been on the increase, if anything, in America, and has risen to about 10% from about 1%. But that's because in America you tend to get what you pay your doctor to give you. So that's on the increase, and it's getting more popular. And I hope that this new book, the 50-plus plan, will encourage men to use it and take it up and stay happy and healthy. It's like watering a plant, you know, you don't want to just water a plant when it's gone limp and wilted. You want to keep a little gentle watering going, and it maintains the health of the plant, just as testosterone treatment can maintain the health of men, and estrogen treatment can maintain the health of women.
Dr. Crothers, many thanks.